Hi, I'm Jim Julia, owner and president of James D. Julia Auctioneers. And by the way, thank you very much for checking out our video. Many of you already know that we've been in the auction business for a long time, actually around 40 years. And many of you also know that in addition to our firearms division, we have other specialty catalog divisions. I say that our firearms division is the most interesting to me, and it is because of all of the history. And that's pretty much specifically what I'd like to talk to in this particular video, is about our spectacular auction coming up October 1st and 2nd, and some of the great historical items that are included in this auction. This auction is spectacular for the overall condition of the items, the overall rarity of many of the things, but also many of the things have fabulous history. And this is what I'm excited about showing you right now. Speaking of history, to just go back a little bit further back this year, we set a record in the firearms world. Our company has averaged the highest grossing firearms auction for the past 8 or 10 years. But this spring we broke all records. Our firearms auction grossed just under $18 million. At the time, it was an astounding figure. No one had ever come anywhere near that, including us. And I figured it's going to be a long time before that record's going to be broken. Well, I can't guarantee you this, and maybe it won't be, but I will tell you that we've got between $19 and $20 million low estimate for firearms in this auction, October 1st and 2nd. So it's truly worthy of the title spectacular. Now, to talk about historical items, all of us know about Colonel Samuel Colt, a very smart man. Smart, yes, because he was a wonderful developer, and he created one of the most successful repeating revolvers of the time. He was also a successful businessman eventually, but there were a lot of things that Colt was brilliant about, and one of them was reading people. And this very first lot exemplifies that. Here, on this particular lot, right here, we have lot number 1465. This is a rare cased Colt model 1860 Army revolver given to Attorney General Edwin Bates. Now, Colt understood that many human beings are vain. And so subsequently, just as the war was breaking out, the Civil War was breaking out, he knew the great opportunity to, if he could sell arms to the North, he would have tremendous opportunity to sell a great number of arms before the war was through. So what he did, very clever, he presented something like, I believe it was 60 different fancy revolvers to various dignitaries and military officials in the Army at the time. Most of these firearms were fancy, ornate, and engraved firearms. Not like this particular one here that you see in this case. This one in the case has extra finish, but you'll notice there's no fancy engraving, there's no fancy grips, there's no fancy embellishments of any type whatsoever. The reason is he was giving this special presentation to the man in this illustration. Look at these next three illustrations. This was Attorney General Edwin Bates. Edwin Bates was a crusty, conservative, very firm man. For Colt to have tried to play upon his vanity would have made him an enemy for sure. And Colt was a brilliant man. He knew better than to give Bates some kind of a fancy gun, so he made this special gun here with just high finish, nothing extra special about it. It is known, this is serial number 11705. We know that serial number 11703 and 11704 were given to General Andrew Porter, and another pair ranging 11706 and 11707 were given to General Irwin McDowell. These particular Colts, which are finished in bright glossy blue, were given to Bates. This particular revolver was given to Bates. The revolver initially was loaned to the Missouri Historical Society on December 1929 by Mrs. Charles N. Bates, sister-in-law of Lieutenant General John Colter Bates, who was the son of Attorney General Edwin Bates. The gun is extremely fine condition. It comes from the Dr. John and Margaret Pickup collection of Tasmania, and it carries an estimate of $50,000 to $70,000. Okay, the next item also comes from the Civil War era, and it most recently is from a phenomenal collection. I'm speaking of Lot 2000, which is a spectacular gold bejeweled sword that at one time was owned by General and President Ulysses S. Grant. As I said, most recently it came from the Kevin Hoffman collection. Mr. Hoffman has amassed in his lifetime probably one of the finest American sword collections in existence, particularly from the Civil War era. Kevin recently retired and made a decision just a short while ago to sell some of his swords and create a stockpile of money from which he can use in the future, despite his retirement, to be able to continue to acquire swords for his collection. So we have some astounding swords from this collection. Now, this particular sword here, notice the close-up. The close-up here indicates that it was presented by General Grant, President, on his visit to England to Colonel Horatio Wilson, June 1874. This is a high-grade presentation sword, and those are genuine, and as we look at this next image of the hilt, those are genuine rubies, emeralds, sapphires, and diamonds. I mean, this is a class sword. There are a couple of Wilsons that are connected to Grant's family, and it is known that Grant, once out of office, went on an extended European tour and arrived in England late in May of 1877. We're not absolutely positive who the Colonel Horatio Wilson is, but I'm sure upon some appropriate research, it will prove to be very interesting. This exquisite sword is in very good to fine condition and carries an extremely conservative estimate of $35,000 to $45,000. Now, with all of Mr. Hoffman's swords, the goal was to offer quality, rarity, history at a very realistic and conservative estimate, and this surely is very realistic and conservative. Okay, the next Civil War item I'd like to tell you about is this magnificent pair of 1861 Colts. They were given to a Medal of Honor winner. I don't know how everyone else feels about Medal of Honor winners, and I can't imagine that anyone would feel any different than I do, but I am extremely in awe of people that have managed to win the Medal of Honor. Some years back, I was on a trip to Boston. In the hotel I was staying in, there was a convention of all of the living Medal of Honor winners, and there were a great number of them present there wearing their Congressional Medal of Honor. I rode up the elevator a couple of times with a group of these men, and to me there was just an entirely different aura in that elevator as I rode up with these gentlemen. These, in my mind, very, very special men. And the particular man who acquired these pistols was very special. These revolvers were presented to Charles Amory Clark, a Medal of Honor winner from the 6th Maine Volunteer Infantry. He enlisted at 21 years of age as a corporal from Sangerville, Maine. Now, Sangerville, Maine is just a small community up here in northern Maine, but from Sangerville, Maine came the very famous Western artist Harvey Dunton. His paintings bring a tremendous amount of money. Also from Sangerville, Maine, came another figure that most gun people will recognize, Sir Hiram Maxim, who invented the machine gun. Sir Hiram Maxim was born in Sangerville, Maine. In any case, his unit was mustered into service on July 15th, 1861. He earned the Medal of Honor for his actions in the assault on Mays Heights, outside of Fredericksburg, Virginia, and for his leadership in saving his regiment in the absence of his commanding officers by leading the regiment down a precipitous height at Banks Ford, Virginia, in the process repulsing an entire brigade of Confederates. These exquisite plated engraved Colts with carved ivory grips are in fine condition. They carry a pre-sale estimate of $75,000 to $125,000, and they allot $1,488. Okay, we're going to move on from the Civil War now, but we're still talking about important and historical figures. And when you think of the evolution of the West, particularly the latter period of the Western culture, some names crop up, such as Annie Oakley. Annie, during the outbreak of the Spanish-American War and the First World War, went to the U.S. Army and offered her services as a marksman instructor. And of course, during those days, everything was male, not female. And they said, oh, Miss Oakley, we have plenty of fine men to instruct our soldiers. Now, remember, Annie Oakley was the finest shot in the world at the time. But anyways, she tried during the First World War to do the same thing, and they turned her down. So she went home, got all her fancy guns that had been presented to her, silver medals and trophies and so on and so forth, and donated them to the War Savings Fund so that they could convert them into cash to generate money for the soldiers. So she was a very patriotic lady. The next lot I've got to tell you about, I really admire, and that is this 12-gauge Parker shotgun here that was ordered by her husband, Frank Butler. It is serial number. It is catalog number 2539, and it is, as I said earlier, 12-gauge. It was delivered to Frank Butler. It is unique in that it is the only known Parker to actually portray Annie. If you look at this second photo here of Annie, you see her there in a shooting pose. Notice the big wide rim bonnet that she has on. That was a trademark of Annie Oakley. She wore that bonnet all of the time. Now, if you go to the next photo, here is the breech, or the side, of the shotgun, with an image that looks almost exactly like Annie. Note the pleated dress, the skirt, note the wide brim bonnet. And now go to the other side. There she is again with a wide brim bonnet. This was ordered by Frank and delivered to him. The provenance, this particular gun has specifications outlined in the Parker archives indicating that it was ordered on February 21st, 1903 by Frank E. Butler. The condition is fine as refinished, and the barrels have been shortened a little bit, but it's generally in very good condition. The estimate is $30,000 to $50,000.